Good evening, Darksiders. I hope everyone's doing well today. Today I want to take a moment to talk about Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, and can it save the Star Wars as a whole, and especially the sequel trilogy. Now, before we really get into that discussion, I want us to go back to when the sequel trilogy was first being announced and The Force Awakens was coming out. Now, take that step back and think. As Star Wars fans, it was a pretty good time. I mean, we were very excited to get more Star Wars movies because we haven't had Star Wars movies since the early 2000s with George Lucas's prequel trilogy. And the pure fact that we were told that we were getting another Star Wars trilogy, which was to continue the story of the original trilogy's heroes, it was great. And plus, to even add more to that, you couldn't get on any type of social media, or even the mainstream media for that much, and not see something about Star Wars. I mean, it was everywhere. YouTube, Star Wars. Facebook, Star Wars. CBS, Fox News, NBC, Star Wars. I mean, it's undeniable that the hype and the excitement was very high and very real. Especially me as a collector. I mean, when they came out with the Black Series, I spent quite a bit of money on sequel-era merchandise because at the time, I thought it was going to be the next big thing. And, as I said, I was excited as a Star Wars fan, as I'm sure most of you were. We were just really excited to see the next chapter of Star Wars. Now, December finally came. The Force Awakens was released. Now, like it or hate it, it was undeniable that The Force Awakens was a box office success. I mean, to be fair, this was the first Star Wars movie in 10, 11 years? Unless you want to count the Clone Wars animation movie, but we're not going to talk about that. So, you got out of the theater, you saw The Force Awakens, and for the most part, the reception of the movie was very good. And probably even a few weeks after The Force Awakens released, it was the same thing. Theory videos, review videos, potential videos just everywhere. People were excited. You see, J.J. Abrams, if he did anything with The Force Awakens, he definitely set up a very good mystery. But as we know, the mystery is still unsolved, and we will get to that in a moment. So after The Force Awakens released, it was the same thing. Hype was real. People were excited. We were ready to see the next chapter of Star Wars. Now, I don't think many people would deny this now, whether you support the sequel trilogy or you dislike the sequel trilogy, but basically, The Force Awakens was just a retelling and a reskin of A New Hope. So, I mean, it's undeniable at this point. But, I mean, it got the excitement up and let out a lot of mystery. So I think a lot of the fan base at the time forgave the pure fact that it was just a retelling and a reskin. And I remember, just as a fan at that time, for years, about a year and a half, I mean, it was just theory videos about who Snoke was, what Kylo was going to do, who Rey was, what Luke was going to do. I mean, it was a glorious time for fan theories. Truly, it was. Because that Star Wars excitement was still really high. Now, we could talk about Rogue One, but we're going to skip over that. So, The Last Jedi. People were speculating. The theories were still running high. And the pure fact that Luke was going to have more screen time in it was really exciting for the fans. Because most people knew that during this time frame, Luke is no longer a Jedi trainee, he's not a Padawan, he's not a knight. I mean, this was supposed to be Grand Master Luke Skywalker. And for those of you who read the EU books and novels and comics, you know exactly how powerful Grand Master Luke Skywalker was. I mean, once again, the excitement was there. We were ready to see exactly how powerful Luke Skywalker has become. We wanted to know more about Rey. We wanted to know more about the First Order, what the New Republic was going to do since their Senate was destroyed. All the mysteries that were set up in that was set up in The Force Awakens was still alive and well. But then the release date for The Last Jedi came out. Now, I have to make this perfectly clear. If you are a fan of The Last Jedi, I will support you. I mean, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong or say you're a bad person or a bad Star Wars fan for liking it. I mean, if you like the movie, that's fine. I mean, I've liked tons of movies that most people really didn't like. We all like different things. It's what happens. But we cannot deny that The Last Jedi divided the Star Wars fan base. I mean, it is almost undeniable at this point. I mean, I could go on and on about it, but so many other YouTube channels and people have already done that hard work for me. But the quick rundown was, and this is from my point of view, the reason that there was such a divide is, one, Luke Skywalker became Jake Skywalker. He was a completely different character that, one, we weren't expecting, and two, that we just really couldn't see Luke becoming. A lot of the mysteries that were set up in The Force Awakens was not answered in The Last Jedi. I mean, it felt very incomplete still. And let's be fair, there was a lot of character story arcs in that movie that was just completely pointless, and they didn't lead anywhere. Do I need to say more about Canto Bight? Or let's go even further. Can I say more about Rey's Force training with Luke? I mean, did she really do any training? Did she really accomplish much of anything? And The Last Jedi was just, in my opinion, was just a bunch of random ideas that people said, hey, instead of doing this, we should throw this and subvert their expectations. I mean, what do you expect from Ruin Johnson, a man who says the best type of movie is when half the audience likes it and the other half hates it? But, as I said, the reality is The Last Jedi divided the fan base, and people just became very uninterested with Star Wars at that point. And the Solo movie is proof of that, because it was a box office failure. Now, Solo was a troubled production, as I'm sure most of you know by now. But, as I said, the pure fact that just not many people went and saw it, that should be telling that just the hype for Star Wars has really died down. And even more evidence to back that up is when you're looking at like the theory videos and the praising videos and the Star Wars videos before the Force Awakens came out, after the Force Awakens came out, compared to after The Last Jedi came out. The videos just were not there. I mean, the theories, there were still some YouTube channels that still kept it up, but for like the general just population of social media and YouTube, it's just that excitement and hype was not there after The Last Jedi. And that's because just people lost interest. They didn't want to see this Star Wars because The Last Jedi just put such a bad taste in their mouth. And honestly, I am right there with them. I still haven't bought The Last Jedi on DVD just to add it for my collection. And when it comes to Last Jedi merchandise, I haven't bought nothing. Because I just did not like that movie. So I'm not going to waste my money on stuff that is part of a movie I don't like. So as I said, that was just a quick little recap on what happened. Now that we're caught up, we are going to talk about Rise of Skywalker. We're going to talk about the good that we've heard, or at least what I do consider good, and then the bad that's came out recently. So, a couple months ago, we found out that J.J. Abrams, he came back. Which some people, they did like what he did in The Force Awakens, and a lot of people were excited to see that J.J. Abrams was coming back to Star Wars. And from everything we've seen of the trailer that they showed at Star Wars Celebration, Kylo Ren getting his mask back, the Anakin's lightsaber getting repaired, Rey using it again. I mean, it definitely looks like J.J. is setting up for what he originally placed in The Force Awakens, that where you were going to get those mysteries solved. And he even came out and said that he's going to focus more on Rey's lineage, which for a lot of people, that was something that was kind of bugging us. Like, who is she? We still don't know who she is. Now, The Last Jedi had said she's nobody, but since J.J. Abrams came out and said, no, we're going to focus more on her lineage, I personally believe she's going to become somebody now. But it's just a question of who she is, or what she is, depending on which theory you want to follow. And another good sign that people saw was JJ went to the father of Star Wars, George Lucas himself, to discuss how can he end the Skywalker saga. So, I mean, those are just some of the good things that, personally, I've seen and I kind of liked. Now, am I still skeptical about the movie? Absolutely. I mean, after everything that's been happening with Lucasfilm, Disney, and just the Star Wars movies as a whole, yes, I am extremely skeptical about this. But as I said, I'm trying to point out that there is some good in the movie. Now, other stuff that has kind of come up, it does seem Luke is going to return, but the capacity on how he's going to return is still a mystery. It would be nice to see Luke come back and actually get a redemption arc, but we just don't know. But as of right now, that's pretty much all the good we see out of the Rise of Skywalker. Now let's talk about the bad that we've heard. And I hate to say it, but from what I know, it seems like the bad is outweighing the good. Now, I guess some of the first bad I can say is obvious that Lucasfilm is treating The Rise of Skywalker like it's their end game, that this is going to be the end of the Skywalker saga, and there's going to be no more Star Wars based off the Skywalker family. So that in itself can lead up to a lot of theories. But at the same time, it shows that they don't realize that Star Wars is not just about the Skywalkers. Now, the Skywalkers have obviously been the main characters throughout the movies and the Clone Wars animation show, but Star Wars is not about the Skywalkers. And other few crazy things is when the Vanity Fair magazine came out and showed us interviews with Kathleen Kennedy, J.J. Abrams, and a few other cast members of The Rise of Skywalker. And what they've said sounds very troubling. So we go back to J.J. Abrams first. So as I said earlier, some of the positive that he did is that it looks like he's setting up for the story that he had in mind, and he went to the father of Star Wars to get advice how to end the trilogy. But then when you read the Vanity Fair article with him, he basically says, screw it. Fuck it. I'm going to do what feels right. That single sentence speaks volumes. Because what that tells me is that, yeah, he went to George Lucas, he made that public, and he's talking to the father of Star Wars on how to end the Skywalker saga. But if he just says fuck it, and he's going to go off and doing his own thing, why did he even bother talking to George Lucas? That, for me, raised a red flag. Some of the other red flags that popped up from J.J. Abrams is how he talked about that this movie is going to pay for the past debts of the prequel and the original trilogy. Now, that is in a video of its own that I'll talk more about. But for now, he says that The Rise of Skywalker is going to pay for the debts of all the other movies. But then he also said that this movie is going to be less about restoring a glorious age and more about being a free person instead of one of the oppressed. I probably said that wrong, but you get the picture. So, once again, it does make you wonder, what exactly is he going to set up? How is he going to end the Skywalker saga with this? Because if he's not going to basically bring back the Republic or everything that the original trilogy fought for, what are they going to bring after this movie is up? So for the most part, that pretty much settles J.J. Abrams, because in this one interview that he did with Vanity Fair, it basically cancels out everything that he did with George Lucas and then some. Now let's go on to Kathleen Kennedy. Now I know probably a lot of you have problems with Kathleen Kennedy. I as well. And probably I agree with you a good portion of the time. Now, something she said should really get your gears turning in your brain. She talked about how Star Wars needs to be more realistic and it needs to represent modern problems and show modern evils. That the evils of the 70s, which in her words was coming off of a World War II vibe, doesn't work in today's society and today's culture. Which honestly, she is wrong. The same evils of World War II can easily be applied to today. But that's not what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is if you've been keeping up with Kathleen Kennedy, you know about her views and how she wants to take the direction of Star Wars. So when she says Star Wars needs to represent modern evils, those evils depend on a point of view, a certain point of view, mainly her point of view. So if she takes Star Wars further down this direction, it's not necessarily going to be what, I guess, average folk would view as good and evil. It's going to be what she considers good and evil. And with identity politics, social justice warriors, and political correctness just everywhere in Hollywood nowadays, I think we pretty much get the picture on what she means by that. And honestly, it's very tiresome. I'm tired of it, and as I'm sure most of you are. And the fact that the president of Lucasfilm is coming out and saying this, that's another few red flags, because in The Last Jedi, there was a lot of political messaging in that movie. So if Kathleen Kennedy still wants to continue that trend, it makes you wonder, okay, what kind of messaging are we going to get yelled at this time? So now let's talk more about the actual story. From what we saw of the trailer, Palpatine's supposed to make a return, which honestly I feel is very lazy. Yes, lazy. Now why is that? Well, because Rian Johnson subverted our expectations and killed their big baddie, Snoke. So what do they gotta do? They gotta bring in the Emperor, the big baddie of both the prequel trilogy and the original trilogy. So to me, that's also a red flag, because it kind of feels more like they backed themselves up into a corner instead of a continuous flow of a storyline. So the pure fact that they're reaching in for old villains, that should also be a red flag. I mean, I could sit here and go on, but those are the main things that are going on in people's minds. And honestly, so far, with the Rise of Skywalker trailer, there's really not much that I saw that really interests me, that is really getting me to go, I'm going to go see that. And honestly, with more of what we're hearing now, especially with the Vanity Fair magazine article that came out, it's honestly steering me a lot more away from seeing the Rise of Skywalker. I mean, this is supposed to be the end of the Skywalker saga, which once again I believe is a very big mistake. But as I said, they're treating it like Avengers Endgame. In reality, it's not. I don't know if the Rise of Skywalker will fix the Star Wars fan base. I mean, as far as we know, the movie could destroy more of the fan base. You know, just a little background, I have been keeping up with a lot of the comics and the books, and I will do more reviews on those. But for right now, Rise of Skywalker, my personal opinion is I don't think it's going to solve anything, and I think it might do more damage than good, because it just seems like it's going to be more of The Last Jedi mixed in with identity politics and political correctness. So, do I want Star Wars to be good? Yes, absolutely. I want to feel that same excitement when the sequel trilogy first got announced, you know. Yeah, I was fanboying up. Not gonna lie, you caught me red-handed, I will admit that. But now, with everything we know, I just don't see the Rise of Skywalker being able to repair as much as it can. Now, hopefully our expectations will be subverted in a very good way. But I just don't see it happening. And honestly, I think a lot of the Star Wars fans don't see it happening at all either. That is pretty much all I have for you this evening. Darksiders, I hope you like this video. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun jazz. Get this message out there. Show most of the Star Wars fan base, that they're not alone in these thoughts, that there is tons of people who agree with them. Well, until next time, Darksiders, this is Darkside Leathers, and I wish y'all a very good night.